And now we have meristems. Meristems are areas in the plant where growth occurs. And there are going to be three main types of meristem that I'm going to talk about. The first one is called apical meristem. This is where a plant grows in length. So this is going to be located at the tips of the stems and the tips of the roots. Now I don't know if you guys know where or how plants grow, but let's say here's the soil. Now I know that sometimes people might think that the plant grows from here and grows up, but that's actually not the case. The plant grows from up here and gets taller, and the plant roots grow from the tip here and get deeper. There's no growth that occurs here, even though that's where it looks like the plant would grow from. But it's always the tips of the stem and roots. That's where growth in length occurs. Now here we have a different kind of meristem called intercalary meristems. These are only in monocots. Now, I don't know if you remember from the end of the last section, I think it talked about monocot and dicot. And basically stands for monocotyledon. And a cotyledon is a seed leaf. And plants either have one seed leaf or two seed leaves, so that's where you get monocot and dicot. There's other distinctions in monocots and dicots as far as the organization of their vascular tissue, which we'll talk about when we get into the plant organs, the leaf systems, and the roots. We look at monocots versus dicots and how the vascular tissue is organized there. But intercalary meristems only occur in monocots and only some. So in dicots, you're not going to have intercalary meristems. Intercalary meristems occur above the bases of leaves and stems. This is actually what allows grass to grow so quickly even after it's cut. You might notice if you have a lawn or yard outside of your house, and if you or somebody else comes to cut the grass, it starts growing right away. That's from intercalary meristems. They are most obviously displayed or illustrated in bamboo. You can see in between each of those nodes that you have intercalary meristems, which is there in the diagram in the kind of reddish shading here. Gymnosperms and most dicots have a third kind of meristem called lateral. If you understand what the word lateral means, it means like side to side. This is the meristem that allows stems and roots to increase in diameter. It grows out and becomes thicker. The lateral meristem is located near the outside of the stems and roots. You can't get thicker. You don't grow from the inside. It's really towards the outside, but I'll go into that more in a minute. But here you have a diagram that shows you the placement of the apical meristem, intercalary meristem, and lateral. And of course, the apical meristem is going to grow in length. That'll be a top and bottom. Lateral meristem is going to grow from side to side. And intercalary meristem basically just grows after it's cut. So if it's cut here, then it will grow again. Now, for lateral meristem, there are two specific types. There's vascular cambium and cork cambium. Vascular cambium is going to produce additional vascular tissues. Now, here is a cross-section of a dicot. Could be a stem or a root, actually. I think it's a stem. Anyway, you see there's a distinct area here. There is a distinct area here, and then in the middle you have your vascular cambium. So basically how this works, inside is xylem, outside is phloem, and then here is where you're going to produce more. So what the vascular cambium does is it produces more xylem, it's called secondary xylem, towards the inside of the plant, and then it produces secondary phloem towards the outside. And as you add more phloem here and more xylem here, the plant is going to get thicker and thicker, the stem, I should say. I'll talk about that more in the stems section. So because vascular cambium produces additional vascular tissues, this is the reason why it has to be between xylem and phloem, because it's going to create additional xylem and phloem. So it has to be right in the middle. So here's a cross section of a tree, and you can see the xylem. This is towards the center of the tree, and phloem is this really thin layer right underneath the bark. Remember we talked about bark is the epidermis, and the cambium in the middle. You can almost see this darkened area where it's going to be producing more xylem and phloem. And the second type of lateral meristem is cork cambium, and it's going to produce cork. And again, we've got, this is across like basically a tree trunk, right? Here you've got the central area. This is called the pith. We'll talk about that later. But here is the xylem, this whole area from here to here. And then you have the phloem. Do I have, yeah, here, phloem up here. That's from here to here. And then you've got the cork on the outside. This is this dark ring here. And let's go all the way over here. You've got just outside, remember this is the phloem. In between the phloem and the cork is the cork cambium. So it's going to produce more cork. So it's outside the phloem. The cork cells are going to replace the epidermis in woody stems and roots. That's why I have this. This is cork. You should look familiar if you've ever had a bottle of wine. That's cork. So the function of cork is to provide protection and prevent water loss. So here's basically another cross section. Don't worry about these two right now. I'm going to talk about those at a later date. But you have the vascular cambium. This is all xylem, by the way. You've got your living phloem here. So in between your, let's use a darker color, in between your xylem and your phloem, you have your vascular cambium. And then outside of your phloem, you have your cork cambium, and finally your cork. Now, here, I like this because it shows you what bark is actually made of. Bark is made of the living phloem, the cork cambium, and the cork. Don't worry about periderm. So that's all bark. Now, the last thing I'll talk about is how we describe plant growth. Primary growth is referring to increasing in length. This is going to occur in apical and intercalary meristems. Secondary growth is growth in diameter, and this is going to be made by the lateral meristems, by the vascular cambium, and the cork cambium. So much vocab. Where is my, there? If I mouse, yeah,